I woke up this morning and saw that Teslas were put ablaze in one of your dealerships in Vegas.
Multiple Tesla vehicles have been set on fire across the United States as protests escalate over Elon Musk's role in the Trump administration.
I've seen this happen all over the country. Bullets are being fired, charging stations are put ablaze, Teslas are being put ablaze. You have experienced assassination, threats of assassination for you and your family. What have you done that warrants this? Because I see nothing that you have done except help our country.
Yeah, I mean, it's really come as quite a shock to me that there's this level of really hatred and violence from the left. I always thought the left, or the Democrats, were supposed to be the party of empathy, the party of caring, and yet they're burning down cars, they're firebombing dealerships, they're firing bullets into the dealerships, they're just, smashing up Teslas. Tesla is a peaceful company. We've never done anything harmful. I've never done anything harmful. I've only done productive things. So I think we just have a deranged, there's some kind of mental illness thing going on here, because this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
and I think there are larger forces at work as well. I mean, I don't know who's funding it and who's coordinating it, because this is crazy. I've never seen anything like this.
You actually tweeted out, and I'll put it on the screen, the level of violence is insane. It is deeply wrong. Tesla just makes electric cars and has done nothing to deserve these evil attacks. You just rescued 2 astronauts that have been in space for 286 days. They were only supposed to be there 8.
Elon just rescued 2 astronauts that Biden left floating around in space for 9 months. The SpaceX Dragon splashed down in the Gulf of America during the 5.
You help the people in North Carolina, Tennessee, California. You have, I think, the most creative and innovative car on the market. You created Starlink for communications that's used by hundreds of countries. You're working on helping the blind see and all of these other things. Is it really come down to the basic, you're aligned with President Donald Trump, who also is a friend of mine, and that you have identified well over $100 billion in waste, fraud, abuse that our federal government never should have been spending? Is that what it comes down to?
Yeah, it turns out when you take away people's, what the money they're receiving fraudulently, they get very upset, and they basically want to kill me because I'm stopping their fraud, and they want to hurt Tesla because we're stopping this terrible waste and corruption in the government. And well, I guess they're bad people. Bad people will do bad things.
If any company kept its books the way the federal government does, they'd arrest the officers and put them in jail.
Yes. If it was a public company, it would be delisted immediately. It would fail its audit, and the officers of the company would be imprisoned. That's the level of malfeasance in the federal government, unfortunately.
It's
deliberately, or do you think this is incompetence again?
It's 80%. It's 80% incompetence and 20% malice.
So if you look at DOGE now, and you look at the government and what you're finding, what percentage have you guys even gotten to, and how much of it is Mars, where you haven't even gotten there yet because there's so much you're finding out here? I mean, how many? You seem like a timeline guy when you say, all right, I want to get in there and get all these, numbers and things. How far are we from the end game, where you've seen it all, been able to process it all, and fix it? I mean, are we years away, months away?
I'm reasonably confident that we'll be able to get $1 trillion of waste and fraud out, and that meaning that we'll have a net savings in FY26, which starts in October, obviously, of $1 trillion.
Wow!
Provided we're allowed to continue and our progress is not impeded. And we're very public about what we do.
Yeah, you put it on the website.
Fact,
it's on the website.
I don't know how we could be more transparent. Right. Literally every action we do, small or large, we put on the DOGE.gov website, and we post it on the X handle. When people complain about it, and they say, "Oh, you're doing something unconstitutional," I'm like, "Well, which of these constitutes?"
Everyone knows exactly what you're doing.
Extreme transparency. I don't think anything's been this transparent ever.
It's hard to really grasp the scale of this because we process at the IRS about the same amount of data as a mid-sized bank. And a typical mid-sized bank will have somewhere between 1 and 200 people in IT, and they'll have an operations and maintenance budget in like the $20 million a year range. We have 8,000 people in IT, and our operations and maintenance budget is $3.5 billion a year. I don't really know why yet, but I will tell you that 80% of that budget goes to contractors and licenses. We cannot perform the basic functions of tax collection without paying a toll to all these contractors. We really have to figure out how to get out of this hole. We're in a really deep hole right now. How do we turn this around? We have a $3.5 billion operations and maintenance budget. We have a $3.7 billion modernization effort within IT. That's a lot of budget, and we are way beyond any reasonable cost for what you would expect at a private company for this.
What has been the biggest surprise? You, again, Secretary Bessent's, been in the business world as well, but he heard it from me. But when you first saw this, what was the biggest surprise that you found at that Department of Treasury?
I would say it's the disconnect between leadership and the people actually doing the work is a big one. I would say that it doesn't take a lot, just somebody who cares to solve these problems. You find contracts that are 10, 20, 30, $50 million, and you just ask, like, why are we doing this? And everyone's just like, I don't know. And then you cancel it, and then nothing happens. It's just inertia has just taken over.
So 5 years ago, you were a hero to the left. You were cool, you had electric cars, you had space. And in 5 years, you've gone...
I could go to a party in Hollywood and not get dirty looks.
Yeah. And
Now you might not even get invited.
I'll get invited, but I don't know if I should go.
And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say today, after Donald Trump, the left hates you more than any person on earth.
Yes, I appear to be number 2. I mean, if you're judged by the various signs,
It's derangements. It's Trump derangement syndrome and Elon derangement syndrome. How is it that for you? That's a little bit of whiplash of going from being like Mr. Cool to the devil incarnate in just a couple of years. Is that kind of weird to experience, that transformation?
Yes.
Why do they hate you so much?
Well, because we're clearly over the target. If DOGE was ineffective, if we were not actually getting rid of a bunch of waste and fraud, and a bunch of that fraud, I mean, the fraud we're seeing is overwhelmingly on the left. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not zero on the right, but these NGOs are almost all left-wing NGOs that are being funded, for example. So they hate me because DOGE is being effective, and DOGE is getting rid of a lot of waste and fraud that people on the left were taking advantage of. That's what it comes down to. And the single biggest thing that they're worried about is that DOGE is going to turn off fraudulent payments of entitlements. I mean, everything from Social Security, Medicare, unemployment, disability, Small Business Administration loans, turn them off to illegals. This is the crux of the matter.
Yep.
This is the thing why they really hate my guts and want me to die.
Do you think that's billions, hundreds of billions? What do you think the scale is of that?
I think across the country, it's well north of 100 billion, maybe 200 billion. By using entitlements fraud, the Democrats have been able to attract and retain vast numbers of illegal immigrants. They basically bring in, 10, 20 million people who are beholden to the Democrats for government handouts and will vote overwhelmingly Democrat, as has been demonstrated in California.
Let me ask you this, because I think this is pretty important. The average American makes $66,000 a year. We're close to $40,000 in debt. You said to me in our last interview, we won't have a country unless we fix it now. Can you explain why this is so important that we identify all this waste?
Yes, the government waste and fraud is so high that it's causing a $2 trillion annual deficit. So that's $2,000 billion of waste and fraud that's happening. And the cost of our debt has gotten so high that just the interest payments on the debt exceed the entire military budget. And it was just growing out of control. So the country was going bankrupt. It's just, country is no different from a person. If a country overspends and doesn't spend wisely, just like a person, a country will go bankrupt. So the reason I'm here is because I'm very worried about America going bankrupt due to the corruption and waste. And if we don't do something about it, the ship of America is going to sink. And we're all on that ship.
In a decade, we're going to have a $55 trillion national debt, and it hit $36 trillion over the weekend.
Yeah, and this may be a message to, people out there who have, are wealthy, have a lot of means, or control companies. It's like, just remember, we're all in Ship America here. Your company is not going to exist if the Ship of America sinks. And we should do everything we possibly can to ensure that America is strong for far into the future.
And we're all sunk.
How do we figure out how to save money in the federal government? Well, it's like being in a room where the walls, the roof, and the floor are all targets. So if you shoot in any direction,
and you're
you
gonna
can't
win.
miss.
A lot of the crazy expenditures, things like $2 million for sex change surgeries in Guatemala, or
An essential.
transgendered mice and Sesame Street in Iraq. A lot of that has gotten attention, but some of the stuff you've told me about, tell us about computer licenses and government agencies.
Yeah. So most of what DOGE is finding, you don't need to be Sherlock Holmes. It's very obvious, basic stuff. So in every government department, I say every because we've not yet found a single exception, there are far too many software licenses and media subscriptions, meaning many more software licenses and media subscriptions than there are humans in the department.
Like you were saying, like an agency with 15,000 people might have 30,000 licenses.
Yes.
And even of the 15,000 employees, a good chunk of them hadn't used the license, had never logged on or used the application.
Yes. We found entire situations of software licenses or media subscriptions where there were 0 logins. So it had that.
And yet we were paying for it.
Yes. So the government was paying for thousands of licenses of software or media subscriptions, and no one had ever logged in even once.
Or like credit cards. You found the same thing with government credit cards.
We found that there are twice as many credit cards as there are humans. I still don't have a good explanation for why this is the case. And these are $10,000 limit cards. So it's a lot of money.
Is it incompetence that you're finding, or is this like the biggest money laundering scheme in the history of the world that you're finding?
Look, I think it's mostly, if you say, look, what's the waste to fraud ratio? In my opinion, it's like 80% waste, 20% fraud. But you do have these sort of gray areas. Example would be, so we saw a lot of payments going out of Treasury that had no payment code and no explanation for the payment. And then we'd try to figure out what that payment is, and we'd see that, okay, that contract was supposed to be shut off, but someone forgot to shut off that contract, and so the company kept getting money.
Wow.
Now, is that waste or fraud?
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, both.
It's sort of
you know you're getting something you're not supposed to get.
You're not supposed to get it, but the government sent it to you, and nobody from the government asked for it back. Take, for example, the $1.9 billion given to Stacey Abrams, a fake NGO.
Utter insanity.
Explain that.
That's
the story.
That's corrupt.
Stacey Abrams received a $2 billion grant from the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, as part of a larger $20 billion fund.
That's just corrupt, I think. That's paying off cronies at that point.
1,000%.
Yeah. And by the way, she knew. Like when you get $2 billion, you don't miss that.
Allegedly, it was for environmentally friendly appliances or something, and they've given like 100 appliances so far for $2 billion. It's a very expensive toaster.
But they're really nice.
One hell of an appliance.
That Sub-Zero fridge, it's nice.
This is obviously one of the biggest scam fraud holes we've uncovered, which is really crazy, is that the government could give money to a so-called nonprofit with very few controls. And then and there's no auditing subsequently of that nonprofit. So this is where with the $1.9 billion to Stacey Abrams, they then give themselves extremely lavish, like insane salaries, expense everything to the nonprofit, buy jets and homes and all sorts of things.
Live like kings and queens.
Yes,
on the taxpayer dime.
Correct.
You mentioned,
and this is happening at scale. It's not just one or two. We're seeing this everywhere.
I mean, the reason we're seeing this extreme amount of hatred and violence is because we're actually succeeding in getting rid of corruption and waste. If we weren't succeeding in getting rid of corruption and waste, they wouldn't care. But we are succeeding. Without President Trump, this would be impossible. So I'd just like to say, it's only possible with this president. And we've got this narrow window of opportunity with a House, Senate, and a popular vote, and really we're just implementing the will of the people. And we've got this window where we can finally take corrective action. We can fix the government, fix the country, and create a great future.
I want to save our country. We can't rob from our kids and grandkids. We can't put all that debt on them. And you're right, none of us will have any business opportunities because there won't be any money, there won't be any freedom, there won't be an economy. Thank you for what you did today. I know I speak for a lot of people when I say that. And on the other side of it, you know, your company being a victim of domestic terrorism, we need to get these people that are responsible for this, and you should not have to live through that. Your workers should not have to live through that. Your company and this country should not have to live through that.
Absolutely.
And I hope we get to the bottom of it.
Now, one of the things you told me about is what you call magic money computers at the Treasury. So tell us about it, because I never heard of that until you brought that up.
I call it magic money computer, any computer which can just make money out of thin air. That's magic money.
So how does that work?
It just issues payments.
And you said there's something like 11 of these computers at Treasury that are sending out trillions in payments?
They're mostly at Treasury. Some are, but there's some at HHS, some at, there's one or two at State, there's some at DOD. I think we found now 14 magic money computers.
14, okay.
They just send money out of nothing.
You have an ability to see where leverage points are and how things actually happen. So I remember back, I think it was September, October of this year, before the election, we didn't know who was going to win. And I was at your house in Austin. We were talking about it. And you said, look, I don't want a job in Washington. And you said, all I want is the login for every computer. And I remember thinking at the time that sounded kind of weird. Like I just didn't get it. And I have to say what's interesting on this, if I would have thought like, okay, how do you reform government? Like sort of the traditional way to think about it is, okay, give me an org chart. Let me sit down with the people who are running agencies. And what you saw immediately is to understand what's really going on, get to the payment systems, get to the computers.
Yeah.
Why is getting to the computers so critical to understanding what's actually happening?
Well, the government is run by computers. So you've got essentially several hundred computers that effectively run the government. Even when the president issues an executive order, that's going to go through a whole bunch of people until ultimately it is implemented at a computer somewhere. And if you want to know what the situation is with the accounting and you're trying to reconcile accounting and get rid of waste and fraud, you must be able to analyze the computer databases. Otherwise, you can't figure it out. Because all you're doing is asking a human who will then ask another human, and finally usually ask some contractor who will ask another contractor to do a query on the computer. So that's how it actually works. So it's many layers deep. So the only way to reconcile the databases and get rid of waste and fraud is to actually look at the computers and see what's going on. That's when I sort of cryptically referred to reprogramming the matrix. You have to understand what's going on at the computers. You have to reconcile the computer databases in order to identify the waste and fraud.
I don't know that there was anyone in Congress who understood, certainly myself included, who understood the leverage that comes from the computer and the data in particular. That Congress would think about, give me a report on what your expenditures are, rather than actually getting into the pipes. And I think that has been fascinating, that it's let you uncover a bunch of crap that just nobody knew.
Yes. I mean, in order for money to go to a bank account, it's not like we're sending truckloads of cash all over the place. We're wiring money.
Right.
We're sending money through the ACH system or through the SWIFT system. So in order for money to flow, it's going to flow electronically. That's what you need to look at. You need to look at the actual electronic money flows.
And Tesla and all your companies, you have accounting and you have every expenditure coded for what it's going for. Federal government doesn't work that way.
They do now.
But they didn't. If any company kept its books the way the federal government does, they'd arrest the officers and put them in jail.
Yes. And if it was a public company, it would be delisted immediately. It would fail its audit, and the officers of the company would be imprisoned. That's the level of malfeasance in the federal government, unfortunately.
It's stunning.
Deliberately, or do you think this is incompetence again?
It's 80% incompetence and 20% malice.
Look at the fraud that we've caught. We've caught so much fraud, so much waste, so many employees that never showed up to work. And we have a judge from a very liberal state who ruled like that.
Thousands of people fired by Donald Trump are getting their jobs back today because of the first round of proverbial fireworks that went off in a California federal courthouse.
So bad for our country.
So I guess they closed the department. They're going to have to reopen
the department.
Well,
we'll be appealing it, I guess. Not I guess. I guarantee you, we will be appealing it. We have rogue judges that are destroying our country.
Well, do you believe that at this point, given the totality of these lawsuits, it's a cavalcade of lawsuits, that your administration could be further hampered. Your agenda could be slowed down. They're throwing monkey wrenches at you with these judicial rulings.
Well, we have to go through an appellate process. That takes a long time. We have a judge.
That's the point.
We have time.
Judges, for federal judges, district court judges, to order a sitting president to reinstate fired employees. You're the chief executive officer of the United States. You order that these agencies be reviewed.
Employees, many of whom didn't even report to work, many of whom were scamming this country. And you see the same thing. I could read them off, and I did during various speeches. I read off deal after deal after deal, all big scams. And we have a guy that wants to make a name for himself. You know, in many cases, they're just grandstanders. They want to make a name for themselves. So we'll appeal it, and hopefully we will meet with reasonable appeals.
But he's very unhappy with what happened at USAID.
Well, he shouldn't be. You know what he should do? He should really look at where the money went. They don't ever want to do that. You know, the Democrats always talk about, oh, our Constitution's been violated. The one thing they never talk about is, where did these millions of dollars go? They never want to look, because when you see where the money went and the scams, you don't even have to see anything. Just look at the heading and the scam that they've created. And a judge like him will never look at that. They'll just say, oh, you want to, it sounds so nice, USAID, isn't it beautiful? But it's a whole big scam, Laura. And a judge like that is so bad for our country.
Well, it'll be interesting to see whether you're able to shrink the size of this government. Even Obama said we have to find waste, fraud, and abuse. But you're actually doing it, and the judges are trying to stop you.
We're doing it at levels never seen before.
Another horrible incident happened in Las Vegas last night. The FBI is on the scene investigating, and there's an ongoing investigation being led by Pam Bondi. In what you've seen so far, do you consider what's happening an act of domestic political terrorism against one of your allies?
So Elon is a patriot. And again, I hardly knew Elon until and he turned out that he liked me better than he liked these radical lunatics that were in it, better than Kamala, better than Joe, you know, because he's an intelligent person. And he backed me, and he got very much involved. He actually would go around saying, if Trump doesn't win, our country is over.
But do you consider this an act of domestic terrorism?
I think so.
Why?
I think that if and when they catch the people, and I hope they do, the good thing is they have a lot of cameras in those places, and they've caught some already having to do with that. I think that you will find out that they're paid by people that are very highly political on the left.
Meanwhile, it's because of Elon Musk. Everything he did with SpaceX, that those astronauts stranded for 9 months, they're finally coming home. Mr. President, your reaction to what's unfolding?
So when I came in office, I said, Elon, we got to get them out. Do you have a rocket ship handy? How many people have a rocket? And Biden left them up. He abandoned them. You know, we could have done this sooner, but Biden didn't want to because he was embarrassed by what happened. And now they're coming back. But think of it, Elon's able to do that with his genius, and you have people that hate it. And I really believe these are people that hate our country. It's a big problem.